What's up? This is Pastor John. Thanks for taking a few moments to hang out with me. Here we are as we progress through Holy Week. We started in Palm Sunday. My last video, we talked about Maundy Thursday, and we explored Jesus washing his disciples' feet. And what was it like for him to wash the feet of Judas, his betrayer? Now we find ourselves on Friday. We call it Good Friday, but it was a horrible, terrible experience. So let's now journey and stand at the foot of the cross. In the darkness of the night, Judas arrives at the garden with a band of soldiers. He comes up to Jesus, who he has followed for 3 years, and he kisses him on the cheek, betrays him. Jesus is arrested and ran off and essentially ran through a sham of a trial. Even from when the trial before the first witness was brought through, the outcome was already set. So Jesus was arrested. He was condemned to die, and as part of the crucifixion process, he was flogged and he was beaten. I don't want to go into all the gory details of what that was like, but essentially he was beaten beyond recognition. Then they hand him his crossbeam, some 40 pounds of wood, and he begins to carry it, but the flogging was so severe, Jesus now was too weak to carry it himself. A gentleman named Simon from Cyrene was just passing through, going about his own business, and a Roman soldier grabs him and commands him to take it. So Simon carries the beam up to Golgotha, or the place of the skull. We don't know why it was called the place of the skull. We just think it was mainly because that was a common place for crucifixion, for death. So the beam was laid on the ground, and Jesus was laid down on his back on top of the timbers, and they began to take iron nails, and they would nail them through his hands and his feet, his arms pulled and stretched out as far as they could go. I can't imagine how excruciating the pain might have been when they raised it up. There the crowd jeered and taunted him. Most of the disciples have ran off and hid. We know that John was there and several women. There's Joseph Arimathea, a wealthy member of the Sanhedrin, who had not agreed to what was being done to Jesus. And there Jesus hung on that cross, and crucifixion was designed to inflict the most pain and punishment on those being executed. But it was also meant to be a sign to the others that don't get out of line in this Roman world. Most often, death would come by crucifixion or just plain shock. In order to breathe, because the arms were stretched so far, the tension on the chest, the lungs could not fill, unless the victim would stand up and push up with their legs and push away from the cross in order to take in the breath. And if you look at pictures of the crucifixion, there's also often a loincloth wrapped around Jesus, but most likely he would have been up there naked, inflicted pain, humiliation, dehydration, all these things going. The taunts and the jeers of the crowd, the taunts and the jeers of the criminals, and we know that one eventually would turn, though, and confess Jesus as the King. And we wonder, why did Jesus have to go through this? And that's a longer story. But we see the physical pain, but we don't always understand or see the spiritual side of it. See, God's wrath had to punish sin, and ultimately my sin, your sin, our sin, put Jesus there on that cross. That was a place we should be, but yet Jesus, the very Son of God, hangs there. Not because God is hateful or vengeful, but because God so desperately loves us. And this was the only way to pave the way for us back into right relationship. And Jesus was always fully God, but there's the mystery that he was also fully man. And he experienced that moment, that torment on the cross, as if he was fully man. So there he hangs for some hours, and it actually goes pitch dark in the middle of the day. And Jesus finally says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Again, that mystery somehow is God turns his back on his own son, making the ultimate payment for our sin. A few more moments pass, and Jesus declares, it is finished. You see, the Romans and the Jews, they thought they were in control, that they had laid all this out, but it says that Jesus was slain before the foundation of the world. This day didn't catch God off guard, for he ultimately had planned it and knew it was going to happen this way. And Jesus even had declared earlier, when he was first arrested, he said, I could call down legions of angels to come to my rescue if I wanted to. But Jesus made the choice not to do that. And so he declares it is finished on his terms, because ultimately he is still in control. And at that moment, there's a great earthquake, and rocks are split in two. And there was this huge, massive curtain that hung in the temple that separated the Holy of Holies, that only the priest could go by there once a year to atone for our sins. That curtain is ripped open, and suddenly that Holy of Holies, to where the presence of God was supposed to be, there was now no barrier. You see, our sin, it is a barrier between us and God. And God created us. He designed mankind to have communion with him, to relationship with him. And sin came in and created that barrier. And so Jesus comes in, and his work on the cross removes that barrier. Not because we're right, not because we do all the right things, because we can't. We can't redeem ourselves. And so Jesus comes as our Redeemer. Later, that Joseph of Arimathea, who I mentioned earlier, goes to Pilate and asks for Jesus' body. He takes him down and takes a large linen sheet, perfectly white clean, 75 pounds of spices, and he carefully wraps up Jesus. And he places him in his own tomb. A rock is sealed, and it goes dark. But that's not the end of our story. Sunday is coming.